Take 5 minutes, 10 minutes, half an hour. We've got the room up until 6, so we can go to then, but to be honest, we'll just kind of go as long as it's interesting and you guys want to do stuff.
And we see them falling asleep at the desk.
It's the Friday night alcohol, you know, you need to replenish the sources. I understand. It's too much blood in there.
This is Peter goes to party, you know.
Yeah, exactly. Better be good. Where's the teacher? Right. You all know me, so what we're going to do is talk to Brian, and I've got questions I could ask, but to be perfectly honest, this is about you getting much closer to the guys who did Four Eyed Monsters, because Brian kept being referred to in Four Eyed Monsters, and then there was Brian, and then there was Brian. So actually, the first question would probably be, what was your involvement? What's your background? Kind of how did that fit in? Where did they sort of get you from?
Okay, I started working with Aaron and Susan a little bit after the end of their festival run, right around the time they had decided to self-distribute the film. I'll get to what I did exactly with that. My background, I studied for undergraduate, I was double major in computer engineering and business management, focusing on entrepreneurship and artificial intelligence and data mining and all that fun stuff.
So you're in geek who understands how to make money out of it?
Yes. And then I decided to just stop all that and be a filmmaker, because of the money. And short films especially.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, so I made a bunch of short films, worked in construction for a few years, and then stopped doing that, and then I bumped into Aaron and Susan, and we just...
Were they already doing a whole bunch of the webby stuff? Because they seem like the kind of people, who were just sort of, they would have been doing that from school kind of thing anyway. And were they already just kind of moving stuff webby anyway?
Yeah, they had a website that was, okay, and they were taking the email addresses with the zip codes, and they had started the podcast on iTunes.
Right.
And it was sort of kind of patched together. They were learning as they were going. And then they brought me in, and I said, well, I can kind of understand the filmmaking stuff and kind of help you guys with the technical stuff.
Did you want to get near the glitz and glamour of the filmmaking world? Is that what it was?
The glitz and glamour?
Yeah.
No,
But they didn't. I mean, you could have earned an awful lot more money elsewhere. Somebody, and they weren't going to pay you for it. I guess.
No. I mean, they paid me very, very little.
Yeah. They actually paid you. I'm surprised.
Well,
they paid you.
They owe me money. They will hopefully pay me one day. But yeah, no, I mean, it was sort of it started as kind of a compromise, it's like, well, we'll let you into the filmmaking process on a kind of a new level, because I'd only been doing stuff on my own, and it would be interesting to see how other people had done it, and I'd never been involved in the distribution, and it got to the point where I knew how to make a film, I thought pretty well, but never to get one where anybody would see it, so they would let me in exchange for kind of me going back to my geeky roots. But that became more interesting because it became more about the story, and kind of it was the geeky stuff became part of the art.
So now do you get hired now to be the sort of we're making a film, shit, we need somebody who understands this, and then they come to you and they...
It's starting to happen a little bit. I'm working on the new John Sayles film, Honey Dripper,
right? Okay.
Which has only been I've only been doing that for about a week, but we're gonna try to. Well, the next kind of step is to see a lot of the stuff we did with Four Eyed Monsters. Can we replicate that with other films? And kind of help them find unique ways to do it.
I thought that was the most interesting thing with one of the things I think it was Aaron said. There's a lovely moment where he went, yeah, because we did all this, right? So you can't. So now, you have to go and find new ways of doing it.
Right.
And but do you think you could you turn it into a model? Could you basically go, okay, that was the Four Eyed Monsters model. Now we're going to do it for factual. We're going to do it for drama. It's going to be
right.
It's going to work.
Well, I think there's sort of two kind of parts to that. The first part is there are certain things that become kind of a minimum, right? Like, for instance, Four Eyed Monsters was one of the first films to have a MySpace profile, and it was the first film that was an officially MySpace film profile.
Oh, right.
And that was a big help. But the thing is, you can only be the first one to do that once. It was the first one on YouTube, the first one at Second Life, once. Yeah. But so having a MySpace profile is not going to get you any kind of success anymore. But not having a MySpace profile could screw you. Yeah. So the first thing we can do is we can take all these things that we've done that were first optional and are now necessary, and we can bring you up, bring a film up to speed on that. And then we can say, the second part of it is to say, okay, what are the things we can generalize? All the specific things that were very innovative and very specific to Four Eyed Monsters, we can't replicate that exactly, but what is that about? which I think is about telling a story and involving the audience in a story, and engaging with them in innovative ways that take advantage of the technologies that are available. And that, I think we can replicate that in a more general way.
And there's always something new coming out, isn't
Yeah.
there? I mean, I did a talk to the guy who runs Walkabout and a whole series of sort of pubs and clubs and whatever,
Mhm.
and he said to me, right, I want to be on my face. And after I sort of straightened that out slightly, he could have added tube on the end, and then it would have been
Right.
the whole thing. But then, and that was because we were talking to him about you should have a MySpace page for whatever it was doing. But when he came back to us, actually, you should have a Facebook page.
Right,
kind
right.
of in 6 months' time, it'll be something else entirely.
Right.
So there's a constant shifting sands there, isn't there?
Yeah, but I mean, the I guess advantage that we had was that, I mean, aside from kind of having a geeky background guy on board,
Yeah.
was that we pretty much had nothing to lose. So we could move very fast, make these big decisions. YouTube called us and said, "Oh, hey, we think it'd be fun to put the whole film on YouTube."
Yeah.
And I mean, imagine if anybody had any kind of investment, any major investment in a film, or any kind of corporate backing, and they would go, they'd freak out.
Yeah,
the lawyers would just go
yeah.
insane. And we just said, "Oh, well, you'll feature it? Okay, done."
Yeah.
It took us 10 minutes to make that decision.
So
or
if you
less.
had, if you take that theory, if you had 100 grand, even just 100 grand
Mhm.
in a film at the moment, I guess first question, but assuming you could get over the legals and all that kind of stuff,
Right.
how much money of that 100 grand would you put into making the film, and how much would you put into the geekiness or all the distribution? I mean, it's distribution and marketing really, but there's a whole chunk of that that's about technical development.
Right. Well, I mean, I think for me personally, I'd like to work on some films. I'd like to start a film from scratch
Right.
and say, day one, from development of the idea, this is a plan to do kind of like what Lance does, where it's a feature film with this whole other alternate reality component. Now, whether or not I include sending text messages, that's specific to the story, but I think there would, at a minimum, be a strong web component with a feature film. And I think that could apply to any film, a big Hollywood film, a tiny independent film, and anywhere in between.
Yeah.
And I think it should. We can get to why in a moment. For me personally, there are some new technologies that I want to develop. Aaron and Susan hinted at some of them, as far as some of the data mining stuff.
Oh, okay.
We talked about geo-tagging. It's a bit technical to go into unless somebody has questions or ideas, but the things that while we were doing for it, most of us we thought, wouldn't this be cool to have this?
Mhm.
Oh, but it's too, if we had it, we needed it 3 years ago.
Yeah.
So now, we want to kind of develop those things, and that'll require some separate money, but hopefully those technologies will be things that we can reuse.
And there must be funding models from the technical companies. I mean,
Yeah.
the likes of Nokia, they would love to give you stuff to.
Yeah, which is it's something that we're kicking around is kind of we had these ideas and we say, oh, wouldn't it be great if this existed? And we say, oh well, okay, let's just build it, and we build it in like 2 days, and it wouldn't be anything that you could just kind of let anybody use, but once it's built, you spend a little bit more money on kind of making it usable by other people.
Yeah.
And then that's got to be worth something.
It's a product.
It's like a side effect, and I think it's an interesting idea because if you can say, well, we can make money on the movie and make money on the technology, and if they kind of almost hedge against each other.
Yeah.
And if you can get investment from a technology company, they're not going to bug you like, oh well, they don't get together in the end,
Yeah.
or the protagonist isn't likable enough.
Yeah.
But that's kind of speculative, so we'll see where that goes.
What about the big budget stuff you were saying? What you would do if it was big budget? You think, or you could apply all this to big budget as well? You could just,
Yeah, I think. I mean.
Why not?
Certainly, why not? And there's a goal of, I guess, lowering the marketing costs. I mean, you can make a big budget film. Something like Pirates of the Caribbean. I think, I still think is brilliant.
Yeah.
Even though it's this big Hollywood thing, can there be sort of an additional component to that? Sure, why not? I mean, look at Star Wars and The Matrix. I mean, what this really is about for me, I think, is the idea of moving away from a film just being that square of pixels that kind of just exists in there. Because when you look at the threats that we're all facing with downloading, whether it's legal or illegal, and just kind of the general commodifying of that, of the art that we make, we have like no power whatsoever. And I think there's all this potential, I think people are ready for, in contrast with, say, 60 years ago or 100 years ago, where the audience is learning how to watch films. The audience knows now fully well how to, there's a lot of you don't need as much exposition and so on. So people are ready to have a story that exists outside of that box. You go to see a movie with Brad Pitt in it, you don't forget for a second that he's Brad Pitt and he's married to Angelina Jolie and that whole thing. It's all part of it. It doesn't go away. So, and you remember where you see movies and who you saw them with. So I think the potential is to create that larger story and kind of almost even tailor it to smaller groups of people or even individual people and let somebody take away a much more valuable experience.
I was going to say, it's the experience that you're creating.
Right.
The Lance's stuff was so obviously.
Exactly.
But it's even if the experience is, it's a Saturday night, I get my popcorn and I go to the multiplex and we have the thing, and that's what I'm buying, not the hour and a half's worth of seeing in front of a screen.
I mean, what Iris said this morning and what I think Peter said about, seeing he was talking about kind of the convenience factor, the price factor, and so on, and they listed theatrical as being, this horrible thing. And oh, you got to get a babysitter, and you got to drive everywhere. I think that's terrible. It's a terrible attitude. It shouldn't be that way, and it very often is. But it should be a fun night out. I think seeing a movie in the theater should be, much more fun and more valuable of an experience than seeing it on DVD or on a download.
The cynic in me says, how long before you and Susan and Aaron get bought out? Surely one of the majors is going to be looking at you and go, right, we hire him, we put him in our digital media distribution team, we hire them, they hold the badge, it's fine, done. So.
Well, we haven't had any huge offers yet.
So the clock's running. Okay.
Yeah.
Questions, thoughts?
Yeah. Why do you think it took until the afternoon? Why do you think neither Ira nor Peter mentioned aesthetic value or emotional experience as a component of the decision-making process for a consumer to go and see a film?
Yeah, I noticed that. I don't know Peter that well. I actually don't know him at all.
You know his name's Peter.
I know his name is Peter. I've heard of him. He talked about, I remember thinking that he said, oh, well, there's three factors. There's the price and the quality and the convenience or something.
Quality of experience you mentioned, but not quality of
content. But the way he framed it was exactly the commodity that I'm talking about.
Yeah.
That it's price, it's bit rate, and the size of the screen. And he did kind of hint at it a little bit later about the quality of experience. Why didn't he mention it? I don't know, but I think that it's a little bit it's harder to kind of quantify that,
Or it might just be that actually it took filmmakers to actually bring up the idea that there is an art and a craft involved in making films. I thought it was very, very interesting. So this morning I was deeply annoyed and troubled. I just left. I went for a coffee to calm down. Came back for lunch, and yet this afternoon, what happened was there were presentations from people who actually cared about their product and had enough faith in its aesthetic merit or its emotional resonance with a certain group of people to actually say, I got enough confidence in this product that, albeit I'd prefer to be 100% creative head and not really business head. I've got enough faith in this to kind of put some money behind it. And actually, I've got enough belief in myself that I feel that I should get compensated and at least be able to break even on this project and pay off my debts.
Right.
I thought it betrayed a real kind of difference in attitude between old model distribution and kind of new model kind of basically creative entrepreneurs is a really dull term. But
well, I think that there's so much. I mean, a big problem is kind of this I think, this myth of, finishing your film and it fits in that box and go to the festival and hand it off to somebody else and they give you the money and then you go to the parties and you're done and you start working on your next film. And I think part of that comes from filmmaking is such an unbelievable marathon. It's not even, it's like 5 marathons. We write the film and you finish the last page and you go, oh, thank God I'm done. Oh, but wait, there's 5 years of development and, we wrapped on the set. Oh, we're done, let's have a wrap party. Oh, you're not even close to halfway done. And you get to that, festival premiere and traditionally we're used to thinking, finally, I've been working on this project for years and years and years, I'm done. The last thing a filmmaker wants to hear in the traditional model is, oh no, wait, you got another 2 to 3 years to go on this. So, I propose that the only answer to that is to make that extra time part of the art and to prepare for it well in advance. But I think that new thing makes it very difficult for people to kind of see. I think there's plenty of filmmakers do put all their art and passion into that box, but it's a harder sort of realization to make that you need to kind of bring it outside now.
It is an odd thing to say to people. Fundamentally, you are ceasing to be just a filmmaker. You have to do you've got to do the whole thing. You've got to at least understand it and probably do half of it. And if you're an indie, quite possibly do all of it. And just that's as you said, it's like add another marathon on the end.
Yeah.
And also, then, doesn't the economic model get worse and worse in terms of the income that the filmmaker, the director, the writer-director derives? Because it's bad enough as it is. Say a writer works on a film for 3-4 years, he raises a budget of about $1 million, he might get paid 30 grand for that. It doesn't sound bad until you realise that that's got to pay for his 3 years' work, so he's been earning £10,000 a year. If then he's got 2 more years at the other end,
although theoretically, yeah, exactly,
right.
But it's that how you survive.
Well,
that lengthy process.
I think like Aaron and Lance said, that the specifics of the model are still somewhat up in the air. We haven't seen a film that's really just knocked it out of the water with this model yet, because it's still very early. But just to think about kind of traditional business principles, how they apply, what you're doing here is you're hopefully lowering your costs, because yes, okay, maybe 2 years of your time, that's expensive, versus millions of dollars on advertising. It doesn't work. I think plus another thing is that I would say, if I were making a film, which I will, hopefully soon, another film, I would say, prepare to self-distribute. And you don't have to self-distribute. But like Lance said, if you go to that festival relaxed and you got a backup, and if you're raising money from, say, private investors, I know you guys have some government money, but if you're raising money from private investors, so many business plans, they all say, okay, well, how are you going to get your money back? And you say, okay, well, here's 3 movies that are similar to the one I made, and it's Blair Witch, and it's these things that made hundreds of millions of dollars, and maybe there's one that made like 10 million. And investors are tired of looking at those things. If you can say, yeah, the best case is we get Blair Witch, but the minimum case is I know how to self-distribute this film, then you're going to have a better shot at raising money. Then you're going to go to your festivals and let the distributors come to you. And when they offer you some ridiculous deal, when they say, we'll give you £5,000 for the rights to your film forever and ever on, throughout the universe, you can say, piss off, I got a better deal. And then make them come back to you with, something more realistic, and either you take it or leave it. So I think it's a little bit more investment up front, but you're in a much stronger economic position after that.
Questions over here.
Far away.
I know we've got a film that we're talking to different people about different types of distribution. One, we're thinking planning the self-distribution, as we talked about. Then we've got a non-theatrical distributor who is strongly considered taking it on, who would be bringing it to educational facilities, hospitals, old age homes, libraries, whatever, high schools. They have their vinyl marketing plan. Then I've got a theatrical distributor who would also be taking on the sell-through distribution rights, and who has a relationship with Genius Products, the Weinstein Company's TV and video, they're going to be doing their own marketing. The theatrical people have a PR marketing group that are specialized in generating exposure, etc. So everybody, including us, are going to be generating some level of viral marketing exposure. And I'm wondering the question I'm just wondering is, because I know the theatrical distributor said that he's got his own online DVD and download site as a part of their company. It's called iarthouse.com, focusing on that kind of world. And then there's Jamin, who've offered me a special distribution deal out of the CineQuest Film Festival. They only offered 2 documentaries distribution. It's not non-exclusive, and they have their own viral marketing engine themselves. And it's like, I'm just wondering, is all of a sudden, are all the core groups that I want to reach are all going to be, I mean, wouldn't be a bad thing, but there's going to be crossover, are people going to be not happy with other people doing viral marketing? Do you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I think, well, first of all, be careful with those guys, with John and all those guys. There's...
Why?
Well, first of all, I have had this fight with John before and whatever, but their deal terms are not real good. You get, the filmmaker gets 30% of what they make, which, I mean, even on iTunes for downloads, it goes the other way, you get 70%. Plus, they lock you in for 6 years. And they'll tell you it's non-exclusive, and they'll tell you, oh, we've got our viral marketing and our network, our social network, and we feature content all the time. Yeah, everybody says they do that, but it's not, we all know, everybody knows they go to YouTube. You get featured on YouTube, yeah, okay, that's the biggest video site, that's worth something. How many people in this room go to use Jamin all the time? Anybody? No, me neither. Okay, plus they lock you in, it's got all kinds of DRM. So, I mean, if they offer you, so you say I have a special deal, I don't know, just definitely be careful, call up all those companies, find out what their terms are, or talk to me at the party, I'll tell you what their terms are. But they're all better than John, I'll tell you that. So, yeah, I mean, yes, non-exclusivity is great. And, just kind of be careful about it. I think that we do have to stick together as filmmakers because the download thing and the video on demand thing and the streaming thing is in a very kind of potentially dangerous place right now because there's no tradition for it. And so many of these deals, TV deals and video rental deals and all that, are based on kind of the precedent and tradition and, that's how you negotiate things. Yeah. So these big companies, they are used to kind of having much more control because they control access. You can't get on TV without going through some major company. But you can get all over the internet without anybody's help. Yeah. So they're kind of scared, so they're trying to lock it up. They're trying to sneak into the deal terms on TV deals and so on. That, your TV deal or your DVD deal also includes downloads and streaming. But I think we need to kind of all stand together, even though you can say, oh, well, you know what, this deal, I'm personally not gonna make that much money on it. I think setting that precedent is really dangerous. I think we need to stick together and stand up and say, you know what, we're gonna hold on to our DVD, our download rights, and we're gonna only sell them we're gonna give them for decent revenue share rates and decent terms.
I was wondering about this because I know the people who did The Secret, and they sold their film after intense viral marketing of just the trailer. They finally sold their film as downloadable for $4.99. And then, after a while, generating interest, they ended up putting the DVD for sale for $24.99 with no theatrical TV, nothing.
Sure.
And they found out that 90% of the people who downloaded the film for $4.99 also bought the DVD because they wanted to share it with friends and watch it in good quality and like that. And I was thinking about, they've done now, I think they've done 1 million DVDs.
Oddly, they couldn't. I bet the DRM was pretty constrained on it for the download.
I'm not really sure. I don't really know aware of it.
That's the kind of weird thing is that they'll happily, sell you a DVD for 20 quid that you can give to anybody and probably rip and burn and do everything else, but they will only allow you to download for 5 quid, which you can only watch on that machine. And you can't,
after 5 days, it explodes.
It's kind of weird.
So it's a rental.
But
why don't you just open the DRM?
But
and
the thing is, but their type of core audience doesn't do ripping and stealing. They're a different type of integrity with that kind of core. So I was wondering is for Fluoride because they gave it away for free. I wonder why, because I was really wondering while they kept talking about how they didn't make any money. They're so successful with their viral marketing, and they don't have enough money to buy a sandwich with themselves.
Right.
I couldn't understand that because that kind of model, they work their ass off. I mean, and they're not rolling in money.
It's tough.
I don't understand.
To be honest, I mean, Lance has made a ton more money in DVD sales than we have with Fried Monsters. The DVD sales has not taken off the way we've hoped.
Okay.
But
So
is
for
that
the-
because you devalued your film by giving
I
it
don't
away
think
for
so.
free?
I don't think so. And I'll get to why in a second. But I think there's a number of theories. One is our audience is much younger. Do they have credit cards? Maybe. Who knows? People are not used to going to. Right now, it's only available on our website. It will eventually be available in stores, Amazon, and so on and so forth. And I think that will make a difference. Because you'll have teenagers who can go buy it, for cash, and people buy it. You're asking a lot for somebody to come outside of their normal buying habits and go just to your website and buy it through this B-side they never heard of. So we'll see where that goes. As far as I want to talk about something else, which is again based on kind of very old business principles. Back in business school, they taught us about when the first mass-produced Model T Ford cars came out. They sold one car, and their goal was, let's get everybody to buy one car, and it's any color you want as long as it's black. There's one model of car, and they sold all those cars. It was great, but where do you go from there? And then General Motors comes in, right, and they have the Oldsmobile, the Buick, 5 different models, all the way up to the Cadillac, and you've got this kind of sliding scale. And the goal is, and they said, no, we're going to sell you 5 cars. And they want you to work your way up to the Cadillac. The goal is to get to that expensive car. And so we're kind of following that now, which is you kind of start with the YouTube at one level, which is, it's that big, you can download it if you want to, but you got to kind of hack it, and it's a real pain in the ass. It's got advertising on it. You can't really take it with you, it's a great experience, and you can see it for free, but there's minimal cost or investment.
Yeah.
And then you kind of have your $3 download, cost of a cup of coffee, plays great on an iPod. You can take it wherever you want. It's a little better. Then you have your $8 download, looks great on a high definition TV. Then you've got your DVD that comes with the box, and you work your way up, and everything. Even then is theatrical, you gotta leave your house for it, but it comes on this giant screen, you're with other people, there's a Q&A and alternate reality, all that stuff. And I would say even investing in a film is along that scale. You go from the DVD to the sort of Radiohead, £40 for the vinyl model. And then, you can be an investor in a film, you spend thousands of dollars, you get to get an associate producer credit or executive producer credit, you go to the premiere, you hang out with the filmmakers.
Yeah.
It's all just a different level of buying in. And that kind of fits in with the idea of getting away from the commodity. You say you're not just buying that little square.
Yeah.
You're buying that experience how you want it. And the DVD is not just a little plastic disc with a movie on it. The DVD is a trophy for your shelf.
Mm.
People come over to your house and they look at your DVD collection and they judge you. And, hopefully you're proud of it. There's a story somebody told me, I don't know if it's true, but many years ago, Ken Burns made a documentary about the American Civil War. And they sold it, it was on PBS, and it was this mini-series, and they sold it on 8 VHS tapes. Okay, so they put it on PBS, and all these people buy up the VHS tapes, and it sells very well, and everybody's happy. 3 years later, they get a call from somebody who says, the 5th tape in my 8-tape collection is blank. They say, oh, well, we're terribly sorry, we'll fire up another one and send it out to you. A couple days later, or a couple weeks later, I get another call. My 5th tape is blank. They start getting more and more calls. And they realize that all of them were blank on the 5th tape. But it took 3 years before anybody popped up thinking. Because you buy a Ken Burns miniseries, you buy it to put it on your shelf. And so my hope is that we can find more ways to make that more valuable. I think what Radiohead is doing, do you really need the vinyl?
Yeah.
Is this extra thick vinyl? How many of those people want that? But no, that's a hell of a trophy.
Yeah, I want
And I think if we can kind of give it to people at the lower end, give them a middle ground, and give them that high-end option, you can end up charging even more than what they're used to.
Mm.
Make going to the movies like going to a West End show.
Mm. Okay. Okay. Good.
You had your hand up before for a really long time.
Yeah.
What's
So
up?
I was going to ask, following on from Trish's point actually,
Uh-huh.
another thing that wasn't really discussed today was the actual quality of the films. No one really talked about how good the films were, whether they were well made and so forth. And I just wondered what your view was, because my view is that the traditional model's quite good at hiding a bad film. You know, a lot of marketing will get you a good opening weekend.
Yeah.
And in fact, in England, certainly, people aren't that passionate about films. Generally, they'll just go to the cinema and they'll almost pick from whatever happens to be there. And if it's bad, it's good. It's almost luck. They just pick the
Right.
films that are available. Whereas in the model we've been talking about today, the quality of the film is even more crucial because you're being so much more open with the content and you're asking for more sort of investment from your audience into that content. So do you think this would, I guess the fundamental question is, do you think this would drive up better quality films, but also how do you think that kind of works? Because obviously the value of your film depends so much more on how good it is actually, because you're being so much more sort of upfront with it.
Right, right. I mean, I think quality is very important, you know, especially when you're a small film with a disadvantage of not having any money or celebrities or anything like that. But I think I see it kind of moving away from just that kind of objective question of, is this good or bad, right? You know, because right now you have the Sundance Festival stamp of approval, and you have all these kind of, you know, the Oscars and whatever else they do. And frankly, I've seen a lot of crappy movies that played at Sundance and worse movies that got Oscars. So I think it becomes less about, is this movie just good or bad, but does this appeal to you? And where does that come from? You know, because I've seen there are a lot of successful movies, and even these small, independent, self-distributed movies that I don't like, but they have a hell of a following. So where does that come from? I think there's this whole, so much value in content curation. You know, traditionally you look at, is something on HBO and, or whatever you guys have here,
Yeah.
you know,
BBC.
right.
Channel 4, one of Sky.
Yeah. Is something kind of has that stamp of approval. It's not really even about the stamp of approval, it's about access. You know, access is now hopefully going to not be a problem anymore. So it becomes about just, is this good? Does this have a stamp of approval from somebody that I trust?
There's a thing about aggregated niches there as well, isn't there? It's
Yeah.
sort of, you know, it's sort of...
But I think one of the things that Aaron and I talk about all the time is that I think, and we're talking to guys at YouTube and all these other sites, trying to make every single person a content curator, and make tools that say, well, okay, you know, you rated this movie very highly, and you're my friend, so you recommended it to me, and then I rated it very highly. Therefore, you kind of get a lot of points. So everything you recommend now comes to me, and you know, you rated this other movie very highly. I hated it. So you keep recommending stuff to me, and it's gonna know not to even bother me with your stuff because I don't like your stuff. But maybe he likes your stuff. So kind of everybody then gets their own personal definition of what's good, and you know, hopefully these tools. I mean, there's a little bit of it now with Netflix. I don't know if Love Film does it. You know, kind of a collaborative filtering.
Facebook, you can have shared recommended films, and you can
Yeah. So there's a lot of those tools. I think they can be a lot better, and I think, you know, they will be a lot better. And I think that's where your quality is going to count.
So it's more how much the film is good for you personally, rather than for everyone in the UK.
Yeah.
For example.
Yeah.
We're supposed to wrap up, but dive in.
Oh, okay. I just think you said Lance sells more DVDs than Four Eyed Monsters on, what was it called? I've forgotten.
Head trauma.
Head Trauma,
Head Trauma,
which
yeah.
looks ace. And I was just going to offer some other possible reasons why that is. Number one, he's made a film before, so his brand's more
Sure.
developed. Number two is his strategy was in place from the start, whereas Four Eyed Monsters evolved because of not being able to get distribution. Number three, the artifact factor, which I really like. You're talking about the artifact as against the commodity. His production values, so more money to put in, his higher production values. You can see the art across all of the channels that he's working in. Which not to take anything away from like the video podcast, but it's a different thing as opposed to kind of maybe an artistic experience of all.
I mean, I think the video podcast. I think they do put a lot of.
Oh, well, I'll
in
watch
the video
them.
podcast.
No, that's probably
You disagree?
No. I'll watch them. I'll probably agree with
Okay.
you.
Well,
But
I think you're right. Well, a couple of things on that. First of all, Lance has DVD distributor. It's called Heretic, so they get him into stores and stuff like that. And we will have one hopefully very soon by the end of the year. So we'll see where that goes. And I think you're right. Lance has, you know, he's older. He's old.
Yeah.
He's almost a grown up. You know, we're sort of the like fiery kids that will just kind of, you know, shoot off a video to YouTube. Like, yeah, let's throw the whole movie on YouTube. So we end up doing. I think his approach is very smart and almost in a lot of ways more conservative.
Yeah.
You know, up until I saw him doing this alternate reality thing, you know, I thought we were kind of doing the more crazy stuff. But you know, so it's we're more experimental than he is, definitely.
Is it also not because he's very genre specific as well?
It-
Horror
it-
has.
Yeah, I mean, Foreign
Sort of
Monsters
ready-
is tough to pin down.
Right.
It's hard to
That's it.
explain it in an elevator, you know. Whereas you know, horror movies, yeah, it's definitely a genre thing. But yeah.
So Richard, you asked Brian a question earlier on, which he never answered, which was, you got $100,000. How much do you spend on production?
Thank you.
And how much do you spend on, if you're self-distributing or as a fallback, how much do you spend on that side, the geeky side, as Richard called it?
Right. Yeah, I mean,
Or percentages might be better.
I mean, you know, again, I don't know exactly how to break that down as a budget. You know,
Gut instinct of how you would divide it up.
how I mean,
You got 100 grand. You've got making the film, marketing, distributing, and the techie development bit.
well, so I mean, I would
And your fee.
my fee.
And my fee, because I'm a consultant.
My fee is $90,000. No. I mean, I don't think it would be helpful to give exact percentages, but I guess a general sort of budgeting strategy is you know, you've got your production of your content. I would encourage you to look at all your content kind of together. I mean, look at when they did the Matrix sequels. You know, whether you like them or not, you know, they made, you know, multiple video games, and they made, you know, multiple movies and online comic books, and when they were shooting for the video game, the actors didn't know, is this scene going to be in the movie, or is this going to be in the third movie, or is this going to be in the video game? I think you can kind of do that all together, and then kind of pick and choose. You know, even if, like, you know, your feature is maybe more narrative, and your additional web content is more documentary stuff, you can still kind of put that all together and call that your production budget, and you know, and then just kind of make that part of it. I like to
And
say
actually,
we're
the marketing content is actually part of the content. It's not part of
Yeah,
the marketing
and-
anyway. So
yeah.
it's all-
and you know what?
Yeah.
And you can, and like Lance said, you can sell that later.
Yeah.
You know, the Foreign Monsters podcast will be on TV, and you know, don't think we're not getting money for that. So, you know, there is that, and then for the technology budget, I would say, you know, think about how you want to use that for the long term. I mean, how much of that do you need to be really original, and it becomes part of your story? You know, I'm working on some things that, you know, I would love to be able to take some of the stuff we did and make it usable for everybody. You know, and it won't be that costly, I hope. You know, I'm still working out the prices and stuff like that, and we haven't even built it yet, so it's several months out at least. But you know, it shouldn't be a major thing. But if there's something, you know, like Aaron and Susan's next film will be very specifically tied to technology. That, you know, there's stuff that that film cannot be made without stuff that has never been done before. And that film's gonna have a much bigger technology investment than most other films, you know, relative to the budget. But then, you know, if you need to do that, you say, well, you know, okay, well, is this stuff going to be usable later? And maybe it's worth that investment because you can use it on, you know, the next 5 films you do. I mean, look at, like, you know, Lord of the Rings, and they need all those, you know, 2,000 warriors, and they got to build that software. But hell, that's really usable software. It's worth that investment. Does that?
Well, so they got $100,000 on their credit cards. What percentage of that went into production? There's
Their budget is a little bit is tough to nail down because basically their only real budget is their lives. You know, they don't really. I mean, that $100,000 is just what they sort of paid for their rent and their food. You know, they spent a few grand on a camera and like tons of tapes and a couple computers, but you know, not that much. I mean, you're gonna have a computer anyway, you know, and the cameras, you know, that camera in there that we're shooting on, we borrowed that from another filmmaker. So yeah, it wasn't that much, and they didn't really pay, you know, any actors, or I mean, everybody's on deferred. You know, with hopefully they'll see some money, but it's not
I mean,
guaranteed.
the whole film is so entwined within their life that it's difficult
Yeah.
to separate it from their life.
It
So
is really
the film
difficult.
is their life.
Yeah, and they're it brings up another thing. I mean, they're life loggers. You guys know that term, life logging? Yes, no?
No.
That seems to mix. Life logging it's kind of like the Twitter thing, and it's sort of about the concept is that you
move through online. Constantly.
you document your life in many ways. You take photos and you put them up on Flickr and you tag them and you write descriptions and you Twitter and you're constantly just updating yourself. This sort of this very flexible online diary in all these different formats, with the goal of kind of being able to mine that data for yourself and learn more about your life. Even logging every song you listen to, and all this stuff happens, and it's kind of, people are working on ways to mash it all together, and the goal is to kind of learn more about yourself, and then you can pick and choose which of those things you share. So they're really living that life where they document so much stuff, and the podcasts came out of just, they said, oh, we're having a fight, and I'm crying and you're crying. Let's get it on tape. We don't know what we're gonna do with it yet.
Thursday afternoon, we'll sit down with a cup of tea.
And then later, this script makes for a great movie.
Yeah. I'm going to suggest we continue this in the bar.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.